I am Elle McNicoll, and I am the author of A Kind of Spark, which was my debut middle grade that came out last year in June. And Show Us Who You Are. Show Us Who You Are is my new book out today. You can pick it up from your nearest Moon Lane, in-store or online. It's a labour of love because I wrote it in lockdown, and it's a science fiction book set in the near future, starring a girl called Cora. She is 12 years old and she lives in London, and she's not having the greatest time at school. She's not able to make a lot of friends, and she's a little bit frustrated, and her teacher doesn't understand her very well, and she really wants to be on the school paper, but he won't let her, and she's a little bit frustrated, and she goes to a party, or rather she gets dragged to a party one night by her brother Gregor, and at that party she meets Adrien, and Adrien is every bit bombastic and loud as she is, introverted and cautious. He wants to be a pilot and an explorer. She wants to be an investigative journalist, and they become best friends very quickly. And then Cora learns that her brother works at a company called Pomegranate, which is run by Adrien's father. And at Pomegranate, or the full name, the Pomegranate Institute, they use artificial intelligence to make digital holograms of real people, which allow them to live forever as sort of technological ghosts in a way. So they do celebrities, and then they make grams of real people, and they're holograms, but they look like humans, and they're artificially intelligent, so they talk like humans, they sit and stand and even think like humans. And Cora thinks that they are the most incredible and exciting and magnificent things in the world. Adrien thinks that they're terrifying and that they are a sign of bad things to come, and it's the one thing that the two best friends disagree on. And I can't talk about it too much because there's so many twists and turns, but as the book goes on, Cora starts to unravel the truth of what's really going on at the Pomegranate Institute. And it's a book about friendship, it's a book about discovering your place in the world and your voice. It's about, perfection and what does that mean. Perfection, do we even need to bother with ideas of perfection? There's, a lot of hard fundamental questions at the heart of the book, which I hope people will figure out their own answers to. And it's adventurous, and the first 100 pages are a good slow burn where we get to meet the characters, and then it's kind of off to the races and we don't really slow down. But I really hope people love it because it's very different to Spark, but there is one way in which it is very like Spark, and I want to talk about that for a quick minute. A Kind of Spark stars, if you know it already, stars Addy. She's 11 years old, she's autistic, and she discovers that her village in Scotland hundreds of years ago hunted lots of people for the crime of witchcraft, which was a false charge, and she empathises with those people, and she decides that she's going to campaign for a memorial to be made in their honour. And it's all about how she goes up against her local council to get that memorial made. And like I said, Addy is an autistic heroine, so is Cora. It's really important to me that I always write neurodivergent heroes. When I say neurodivergent, I mean people like me. I am neurodivergent. Neurodivergent is somebody who is autistic, or they have a learning difficulty, maybe they have Tourette's, maybe they have ADHD. Any of these things are classed as neurodivergent. And the reason that I always write books with neurodivergent characters is because when I was younger, I was a bookworm. I loved to read. I started off really loving non-fiction, books about ocean life and about dinosaurs in Egypt, but then I moved into stories and I loved them. But I did always feel that people like me were never at the front of stories. They were never the heroes. It was very rare that you would read about a neurodivergent person in a book, or indeed anybody who was disabled. And if you did, they were usually a side character. There was Tiny Tim in A Christmas Carol was probably the most prolific disabled character I remember growing up. But they were always in the background. And I remember as a neurodivergent kid, I got the impression from reading all these books that I was supposed to be in the background and that I wasn't supposed to ever talk about being neurodivergent or what that is like. And I remember when I first got diagnosed, at first my first diagnosis was dyspraxia, and everyone just kept saying learning difficulty, you have a learning difficulty. And I didn't really know what that meant. and there was a lot of stigma, and I was scared to talk about it, and I was nervous, and it was difficult, and I think I really would have loved to see neurodivergent characters having adventures, having, you know, fast-paced, character-driven stories where they are the hero. I would have really liked that. And I got, you know, when I found out I was autistic and I had lots of sensory issues, I write a lot about what that's like to have in Spark. So I always write neurodivergent heroes because when I was a kid, there weren't any. So I do kind of write the books that I wish that I had had when I was 11. But anyway, back to Show Us Who You Are. I'll talk quickly about who I love in Show Us Who You Are. We have Cora, our main character. She's autistic. She wants to be a journalist. She's quite introverted, a little bit shy, maybe even a little bit guarded. But she's the hero of our story, and she is the one who works out what is going on at Pomegranate Institute, which I can't talk about because it's a massive twist and a turn. Then there's Adrien, her best friend, Adrien Hawkins, and his dog Kirby. They live in the nice posh part of London, and he is bombastic and loud, and he loves to dance, and he's incredibly fun, and he really pulls Cora out of her shell and teaches her how to be proud about her neurodiversity, because he's got ADHD, which he's very proud about, and his ADHD is what makes him fantastic. It's what makes him so lively, it's what makes him so intelligent, it's what makes him so fast, you know, thinking, and so curious, and he really teaches Cora why she shouldn't, you know, be quiet about being neurodivergent, and it's a fantastic, you know, thing to be, and he teaches her to love it a lot. Very much like Kidi in A Kind of Spark, Addie's older sister, who teaches her to love herself and being autistic, because she's autistic too. There's two relationships in both books between two ND people where they, you know, they talk about how, you know, they should be proud and they should love themselves, which I think is a really important thing to feel and to say. It's sometimes hard. Again, I love being neurodivergent, but there is a stigma still from people who are ignorant and who don't know about you know, about people who are different, and sometimes it's just important to remind yourself that it's brilliant to have a different kind of brain, and it's something that I write a lot about in both books. Adrien's father, Magnus Hawkins, is the CEO of Pomegranate. He's very stern. He's going to be in the chapter that I'm about to read. He's very by the book. He cares a lot about business and work. He's always on the phone. He doesn't have a lot of time for anyone. There is Dr. Gold, who is the head scientist at Pomegranate. The grams, the holograms, were very much her invention. She spearheaded their creation, and she believes that they will make the world a better place by giving, you know, people digital immortality to live on after they die. She quickly becomes a point of fascination for Cora. Cora thinks Dr. Gold is incredible. So yeah, there's a lot of exciting characters in this book, and I really can't wait for you to meet them. So I'm going to read a little bit now, and like I said, you can pick Show Us Who You Are and A Kind of Spark up at your nearest moon lane. But now I'm going to read a little bit from the chapter where Cora, our heroine, meets a gram for the very first time. "Now Cora," Magnus addresses me, and my head snaps around to look at him. "I'll brief you before we get in to meet the gram, okay? It's still a prototype, but it's worth doing." "Okay," I say quickly. "Just talk to them like you would anyone, like you would a person in hospital, for example. Now, if you were visiting a person in hospital, you wouldn't talk to them about being poorly, would you? You'd talk about nice things." I think about Mum, about the drip in her arm, the way she swore at one of the nurses. "Okay," I say quietly. "As long as you don't break the reality," he goes on, swiping frantically on his tablet while he addresses me, "then it should be just fine." "What happens if someone tells them they're a gram?" "They get super confused," Adrien answers for his dad, "disorientated. None of them have worked out yet that they're not human, and if you tell them, they just get super upset. Which is why we don't do it," Magnus says firmly. "It's cruel. They feel, they have emotions, it just disturbs them. They're programmed to settle into their new reality. It's a huge violation of our terms and conditions to rid them of that." "Understood," I say softly. "Excellent. Now, touch. They are going to look incredibly real, Cora. You may want to touch them." I don't interrupt him to tell him that I find most touch too intense. "If you try, you won't feel a thing. They're a hologram after all. They won't know that though. So I just have to play along." I'm used to that. Most people aren't autistic. I have to play along all the time. "Exactly right," Magnus says. beaming up at me in the rearview mirror. We drive a little longer and Magnus answers his phone to take a work call. I lean into Adrien and whisper, "So who am I meeting?" He mimes, zipping his mouth shut. "Oh, come on," I fizz. "Tell." "She's some actress, but I don't know her films." Celebrities. I know that's another part of Pomegranate. Celebrities who are still alive, who provide their likeness and their digital souls so that members of the general public can meet them. My fingertips tingle, and I'm nervous and thrilled. Adrien seems less enthusiastic about it, but then he's probably so over Pomegranate by now. The car parks outside the building, and Magnus ends his call. I follow him inside, smiling tightly at the receptionist. She signs me in like before, and nods at Magnus and Adrien. "Are you ready?" Adrien asks me, as we stand in the marble lobby. "Yes," I say shakily. "Who is it?" "It's Della Lacey," Magnus tells me, as the three of us get into the lift. My jaw drops. She's in everything. Action films, comedies, award-winning dramas. She started as a Harlem jazz singer, and then went into fashion magazines and then films. I love her films. Mum loves her films too. Loved her films. We would go to the independent cinema in town to watch her films. Mum would take her shoes off and stare up at Della in wonder. So would I, when I wasn't watching Mum. "Now, Cora," Magnus steps out of the lift. We're by the waiting rooms. "Take a moment when you see her. Sit down and get settled, and then we'll wake her up, all right? Only once you're ready. Get your nerves and initial reactions out of the way and then signal." I don't know what to expect, or how to signal, but I nod quickly. Magnus seems satisfied. He gives Adrien a gentle shove. "My son will go in with you." He's a pro at this by now. Adrien exhales wearily, but gives me a wan smile and nods reassuringly. I take a deep breath, and, after a nod of permission from Magnus, I step inside the waiting room. She's there, in the room. She sits in the pink armchair, facing us, with her long legs crossed at the ankle. She's completely frozen like a photograph, but she looks so real. Her bright eyes, her beautiful hair, she looks just as she does on the cinema screen. Bright nail polish, pearls. I sit, a little unsteadily, opposite her and suddenly have no idea what I'm going to say. I stare at her, at the gram. She looks like a friend you've been speaking to over a video call who is suddenly frozen on screen. Her clothes look pressed and clean. She looks so physically, unequivocally human. "Ready?" Adrien murmurs. I feel a catch in my throat, but I hastily nod, never taking my eyes from her. Adrien lifts his arm as he sits next to me, and, as if by magic, she comes to life. So that is the first time Cora meets a gram at Pomegranate. And I really can't give away any more of the book because there's so many secrets, but I really hope that you too will visit Pomegranate and see if you can work out what's going to happen. I really, really, really loved writing this book. I started writing it in March of last year, so almost a year ago to the day now. It's World Book Day today. Happy World Book Day. I was locked in a room because I had COVID, and I was very, very, very unwell. I was not well, and I couldn't see anyone because I didn't want to give it to anybody, obviously. And this was just before lockdown started, so I just started to imagine this story, and I was talking to virtual people on Zoom and on Teams, and I wrote about virtual people in this book. There's no pandemic in this book, there's no coronavirus. But I just was locked in a room for, almost 3 months until a kind of spark came out in June, and I just wrote and wrote and wrote, and the story came out, and it came out from being isolated, and it came from a place of hope, hoping about the future, and it came from, it's a book about friendship, and it's a real testament to the kind of friends that save your life. I was very, very, very badly bullied when I was Cora's age. I was bullied for a long time when I was younger, from 9 to about 12, and I was bullied because I was different, and I really internalized a lot of that, and it was very, very hard to come to school every day, and the library and books were kind of what I used to get through lunchtimes, and then when I finally met my best friend, everything went away, and everything got better, and it was easier. So that's kind of what this book is about as well. Cora and Adrien's friendship is kind of life-saving for both of them, and it's a testament to the true wonderment and brilliance of real good friends and how they can save your life. And so you know, I was definitely missing my friends when I was in lockdown, so I wrote a lot about, you know, how wonderful it is to have friends, and a kid who like I was getting bullied and kind of pushes through it to come out the other side. So yeah, that's how the book was written. A lockdown book. It's incredible now to be sitting here and knowing that it's coming out. You know, that did not seem possible a year ago, sitting in a locked room, not feeling very well, but you know, now I feel great, and this is what I have to show for it, and I'm really, really proud of it. But now, like I said, you can pick up Show Us Who You Are and A Kind of Spark at your nearest moon lane. But now I want to set a quick writing task. So I've been doing creative writing workshops on YouTube, little mini masterclasses, and one of the things I talk about the most there is the absolute importance of character, and how character is the foundation of a really great story. You can have a really exciting plot, but if you don't have a great character, you know, rooted to that plot, then the reader will most likely lose interest. So what I would love for you to do for this writing exercise is to hot seat your protagonist, so your main character. So I want you to write a profile on them, and I want you to interview them, and I want you to talk to them like they're a real person and have a conversation with them. Work out their name, their age, their background, where they're from, but this is the most important piece of information. And if you do anything, do this. Work out what that character wants. Okay? What do they want? What is their objective? What is the one thing they want more than anything? Because that's going to drive a lot of their decision making and their actions. So Cora wants more than anything to be an investigative journalist. That's what she wants. And that actually gets her into some very good stead later in the book. And I also want you to think about what they are afraid of. What is this character most afraid of? So in A Kind of Spark, Addie is afraid of losing her family, which luckily does not happen, spoiler alert, but that's her fear. So if you can work out what your character is scared of and what they want more than anything else in the world, it's going to be so much easier to tell your story. And if you already have a great exciting plot, it's going to give your book and your story so much more empathy, so much more depth, so much more life if you know what is going on in the character's head and what they're after. It's very, very interesting and intriguing as a reader or an audience member to root for a character who really wants something and is going after it. Okay, so that's what I want you to do, is I want you to think about everything to do with your main character so that you know them better than you know yourself. It's okay if only 10% of the work that you do on character ends up in the actual story. The reader will still pick up on all of that research that you've done and all of that work, but work out what they want more than anything and what they're afraid of. And that really can unlock so much in your writing. Thank you so much. You can pick up A Kind of Spark and Show Us Who You Are out today at your nearest moon lane. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful World Book Day. Bye.